BookTube. I thought I would continue on a tradition that I've started recently with Patrick at Patrick's Book Reviews because he made a couple days ago an incredible top 10 all time favorites book list, and I created my own in response. And then recently, Patrick's made a video about predictions for his like top 10 all time favorite books list for next year because he wants to do reassess that list every year, and I thought I need to do that too because my favorite books change all the time. Nothing's consistent in my reading really when it comes to the list, but I love recommending new books too. So I thought this was another great chance for me to recommend even more books to you, and also kind of get an idea of what are some of my more favorite books because I don't really talk about favorite books as much on this channel, but so I don't know, I just thought why not. And so Patrick has four little categories here. So what could make his next year's favorite books? It could be the books that nearly made it onto the list but this year, the books that we've read once but could make the list on a reread, which is such a great idea, books I just haven't gotten to yet, and also what books do you reckon will repeat in 2027. And so I have my list ready to go. I've pretty much stayed exactly on the same amount of books mentioned, just to make it easier on myself, because I couldn't stop at a certain point. It was getting a lot. But let's start this. So what books nearly made my top 10 books of all time? Well, I do have a couple here. Picnic at Hanging Rock by Joan Lindsay actually nearly made the top 10, to be honest. As an Australian, it is probably the best Australian book probably ever. Maybe For the Term of His Natural Life could sneak there, but Picnic at Hanging Rock is just so fierce. I love it so much. It's gothic, it's moody, nothing certain. You know what it's about. You've seen the adaptation. I will say, if you have read Picnic at Hanging Rock, go and look up what the original ending was for the reason for all these disappearances happening, because it is so 60s and it's so good. And I don't know if it would make the novel better if it was originally published that way, but I kind of love it because it's just so out of nowhere and makes sense if you know. I don't want to say it, but I don't want to spoil it. But Picnic at Hanging Rock could have made my list. What else could have made my list? The Black Arrow by Robert Louis Stevenson, of course. You may know Louis Stevenson for The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Treasure Island, Kidnapped, and those are very fun. But Lewis wrote some incredible poetry and also some just general great historical adventure novels. And The Black Arrow, I think, is his best novel. If you love old school, like Victorian historical fiction, because their historical fiction was just so fun, you will have a blast with The Black Arrow. That's all I have to say about that. I want to do another video of Robert Louis Stevenson, so I'm saving that, but it could honestly make my top 10. I love it so much. Dracula by Bram Stoker could have made the list as well. Everyone loves Dracula. I love Dracula. You love Dracula. That's all I have to say about that. The Wave by Susan Casey could have also made the list too. Actually made the top 10, but I kicked it out. I kicked it out for, I think, The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell. But The Wave is a great non-fiction book about people who surf waves as challenges, and just Susan really, going boots on ground and talking to a lot of people who do big wave surfing contests for a living, and she just travels around the world and just observes this sport, and it's just so fun. I love Susan Casey. Go check out her book. I'm trying to think what it is now. The one where she's going into like the Marianas Trench, I think it is. Underworld, that's what it's called. And also her book on sharks is very great as well. So the holy trinity of Susan Casey, even though I didn't like her book on whales as much. Was it whales? I can't remember. But The Wave is definitely could have made the list. I could have put Ducks Newburyport by Lucy Ellman, one of my favorite books ever. I just relate to it so much. I'm actually shocked it didn't make the top 10. It's like Ducks, if you could blend Marjorie Kemp, Ducks Newburyport, and then Middlemarch into like a stew, and that would be me pretty much. So Ducks nearly made the list. It could have. It could have. Pushkin could have made the list too. I wanted to include a Russian, but I didn't know who pick because I love all the Russian authors, of course. But Pushkin is a bit of my personal favorite. And Don Quixote could have made my list too. This is a shout out to Patrick because he loves that book. The reason I'm actually shocked it didn't make my top 10 books of all time list because for pretty much my whole life, Don Quixote has been a top book for me. I've read it twice by now, and I've only stuck to the Edith Grossman translation just because I've heard it's the best. But it was always a top three. Don Quixote, Moby Dick, and Middlemarch were like my holy trinity of favorite books. But now it's just gone. It's not even in my top 10. And I love it, but I don't know why I didn't make the list. So those are some books that nearly made the list. There was a bit more, but I cut those off. I could have honestly told you I could have put Jackie Collins in my top 10. I really could have, but she just couldn't compete, and maybe she'll make it on next time. But so that's the first category. And then books I've read once but could make the list on a reread. I love this question. It made me think, which is always good. And I have a couple here. I've got Close to Shore by Michael Capuzzo, I think that is. And it's a non-fiction book about the New Jersey shark attacks that happened in 1916. Probably the most famous book on that event. The writing is so gripping. I was on the edge of my seat listening to it because I listened to it when I was home alone. And as someone who lives on a continent and is connected to other countries and is surrounded by sharks, it's a bit too close to home. But just the writing is so vivid and so just beautifully written. And I just loved it so much. I hope it is as great as it is on a reread. It could have made the list. What's another one? Helen Gardner's Diaries could have made the list. I love Helen. I think I'm a bit hit and miss on her at certain times. I love her non-fiction, of course, but her fiction just hasn't done it for me, like Monkey Grip and all that. I don't really go back to it. But her diaries they're so personal and just so like slice of life every day. It got reprinted last year into like a big, I think like 800 page hardcover that I brought instantly, and I read it then, and I'm very much due for a reread of it now, and hopefully could make my list next year. And also the one that first book that came to my mind was The Fairy Queen by Edmund Spenser. I read this book last year actually. I talked about it in some wrap up or whatever. Did I understand the majority of what was going on? No. Do I care? Kind of, but not really, because I was there for the writing. I was there for Spenser's action and the adventure and the drama. I could read Spenser write anything and I would, drop to my knees and just, we are not worthy to Edmund Spenser. But I loved The Fairy Queen when I read it. I flew through it in like a week. It was insane. But I definitely knew I did not pick up on that much when it comes to everything that Spenser was doing on the page. I was just there for the vibes, to be honest, and I had a blast. And I need to find an edition that has more notes because the Penguin Black Spine is kind of sad because it doesn't have enough, and I need help with it, and there's not that much that the Penguin volume has. But The Fairy Queen could make my top 10 list, and it could. But I need to reread it. And then the third category is books I haven't read yet that could make my top 10 list. And right here, I have two major books that I just haven't gotten to yet. And Patrick's going to judge. And the first one is The Divine Comedy by Dante. I know, look at all these classics behind me. Me talking about all the medieval theologians and all that stuff. I read Inferno as a teen and just never moved on. I never finished The Divine Comedy. I want to eventually, but because it's become such a meme for me, at least, I just haven't done it. Like, I've read City of God twice before I even finished The Divine Comedy, and I kind of find that really funny. But I do want to eventually get to Dante and give him a proper go and do The Vita Nuova, and I don't know what else he wrote outside of those two books, but I haven't fully read The Divine Comedy. I know I'm just as shocked. And speaking of Dante, I haven't read the Aeneid. Like literally, I have not read the Aeneid. I have read a good chunk, I think, a decent amount of Roman classics. I just haven't gotten to Virgil yet. I have never read Virgil, and they go hand in hand. So those are probably the big two that could make the list. I just assume because of who they are and all that. But we'll see how we go. Will I read them by the time I make next year's favourites books? I hope so. But what else? The Diary of Samuel Pepys. I've read bits of it because I was reading Amy at Amy's Dusty Bookshelf, her favourite books. And I did read a tiny bit of Pepys' diaries here and there. Just sprinkled out throughout the month. And I really, really enjoyed it. But I definitely haven't read enough for it to be like just counted as read, even in the selected editions and all that. And I loved it so much, and I need to get back to it, but it could be a favorite book. It's a possibility. And the last thing I have here is The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon. I like Roman history, I think. I'm not a history bro. I normally, when it comes to ancient history, I just read it for like the prose and just to get, I just love historians. I couldn't care about history. At least learning about history. I love, like Herodotus and Thucydides and all that stuff. But I'm asking me about dates and all that. Girl, I'm lost. But maybe I'll like Gibbon. Maybe I'll love the sheer amount of attention to detail Gibbon writes in, and I couldn't care about the actual history. I'll just read it for vibes, pretty much. I do have, again, the 3-volume collection that Penguin does in the Black Spines. I want to get to Gibbon soon. And so that's the third category. And then the fourth one is what will repeat on my list. It's the Holy Trinity, pretty much, nearly. Marjorie Kemp would 100% be on my list next year, I assume. Middlemarch will definitely be on there, and Moby Dick. But those are just, I think, the main 3 that will stay. Maybe, who knows? Maybe I could put, oh my god, I forget his name. Thomas De Quincey. He could have made the list too. No, I'm just ranting. Thomas De Quincey could have made the list. But those, Kemp, Moby Dick, and Middlemarch could have, hopefully they'll stay on. And yeah, that is my predictions for what will be on my top 10 list for like all-time favorite books next year. There's a lot to pick from this, so what I've mentioned today. I could have gone on, like the things they carry could have made it on. I better stop because I'm just going to go off. But yeah, so go check out Patrick's response videos and everything he's done. And yeah, thank you so much for watching BookTube, and I will see you next time.